Her name today, and the White House braces for the grand jury's decision on the CIA leak investigation. Tough days for the Bush team are tougher ones ahead. I'm with Republican strategist and former advisor to the first President Bush, Ed Rogers, and the advisor to the Democratic National Committee, Steve McMahon. Eve of destruction tomorrow?
I'm sorry, what?
Eve of destruction.
I don't think so.
You don't think there'll be? I know you've been very loyal here.
That's right.
No indictments tomorrow, you predict?
Well, I'll stand by what I've said before. I don't think Karl Rove is going to get indicted for sure, but I'm not resigned to the notion that Scooter Libby is going to get indicted. Absolutely not.
Okay.
I'm not resigned.
Why not? What do you know that we don't know?
Well, what we don't know is what we don't know. I think what has happened is Washington has whipped itself into a frenzy with a lot of the critics and the enemies of this administration.
But they're sitting in that grand jury. You got a grand jury. Excuse me, Ed. You're saying nice things, but we know the grand jury sits. It's been held to the last day. We know that something's up tomorrow.
That's not unusual. That doesn't mean anything. Yeah, well, something's up tomorrow. The grand jury goes out of business tomorrow, one way or another. But since we don't know, a lot of Washington is choosing to decide there's going to be some indictments we don't know. I want you to advise people out there who respect your opinion. Right now, what kind of odds do you want them to get before they bet on no indictments? Hey, I don't want to give any odds.
I know you don't. I know you don't want to give any odds.
I will put some of my money on truth, freedom, and the infallibility of Karl Rove.
Call him up if you want to. You're going to demand odds, at least like something. Go ahead.
Ed's right. There's a lot we don't know, but there are a few things that we do know. We do know, for instance, now from several sources that are close to the investigation, and you know, I don't think newspapers would be reporting these things.
What does that mean, close to the investigation?
Well, I think generally it means lawyers for the parties involved. That Scooter Libby found out not from a reporter but from Vice President Cheney. We know for a fact that the website for the independent counsel just went up last week. It doesn't suggest an investigation winding down. We know that that the special prosecutor has gotten expanded office space, which again doesn't suggest an investigation.
You know, we knew a lot about Iran-Contra. We knew a lot about Watergate. We knew a lot about Bill Clinton's behavior long before there was any trial. And we were talking about Bill Clinton's failure to face reality for months on this program, I got to tell you. And waiting for him to admit the truth would be a long wait, okay? So we can't wait for Scooter Libby to come out and tell us what he did. We can't wait for Karl Rove to come out and tell us what he did. So we go to the sources to tell us what he did, and he doesn't want us to know it. Let's face it, that's how it's done here.
Yeah.
If you want to put some money in this, by the way, I'll match any dollar you want to put down. There's no indictments.
Pick your pain. Pick your pain. I'm sticking with no Karl Rove indictment.
You putting money there?
Sure.
The reporting has been so sound so far. And what I found interesting, let me ask you this one. The role of the Vice President this week. Unchallenged all week, the Vice President has let it lay out there, according to the New York Times story, that he was the source of information about the undercover agent, Valerie Wilson, that he gave the information to his deputy, his chief of staff, Scooter Libby, who then, we now know from the reporting and from the testimony of Judy Miller, he gave to her. We know a chain of custody now that is going from apparently George Tenet to the Vice President to the Chief of Staff to the Vice President to the reporter, which to me seems to meet most of the considerations of how you trace possible guilt in this case.
Well,
we know all this.
Well, there's a very specific question about whether or not any of that fits the statute that defines the underlying crime.
We know a lot.
But also, there's such a big appetite to move this story. The New York Times and others have concocted these scenarios where they count as a big revelation that Libby and Cheney talked about this. Aha. Well, of course they talked about it, just like they talk about everything else. This was in the New York Times. This wasn't a secret.
But how does that square with the President's original statement back in 2003 that the White House wasn't involved?
We're going to find out. I don't know. We're going to find out. All that's going to come out. But the notion that Libby and Cheney talked about it was a big revelation this week. Well, it's ludicrous. There's, like I said, there's just a big appetite to move the story.
You're really good.
Everybody's holding front page space for this.
You're the guy holding up that little kid that put his hand in and kept the dike from breaking. I know, you're good at it. You hope so. You know you're good. Steve, when you retort to that with some sound facts, please.
Well, there is a lot we don't know, but here's what we do know. This administration took this country to war based on faulty information. The National Journal has just reported today that this administration withheld critical intelligence documents.
See, a big appetite to move the story. They withheld draft copies of speeches that weren't given. Is that withholding documents? Of course not. It's things that went into the trash can.
I know this story. Explain the story. It's a big story tonight.
Every single thing that's being investigated now goes back to one simple fact. The administration concocted the intelligence to go into war, and they misled the American public, and then they didn't, and then they tried to destroy
your crowd believed,
and then they tried to destroy anybody who disagreed with them, and they're going to try to destroy Patrick Fitzgerald next. That's my prediction. They're going to go after this guy.
Hey, I will not.
Would you criticize Fitzgerald?
Hey, I will attack these indictments if there's no underlying crime. If there's no underlying crime here, then something is wrong. Something weird is going on.
So perjury and obstruction, Ed, isn't an impeachable offense
anymore?
There
was no underlying crime with Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton was accused of perjury or obstruction.
He never got indicted.
He got impeached.
He never got indicted.
He was impeached.
Well, you're talking about the President of the States telling a bunch of lies that he admitted to.
Well, that's right. In other words, perjury itself is sufficient to remove a guy from office, but not to indict a staffer in the White House?
You can't compare this to Bill Clinton and his misbehavior.
No, I think you could argue that national security is at least as important as his
to me, that's
awful sex life.
Look, that's not attacking anybody. To suggest these people
revealing the identity of a covert agent for the CIA.
I think the country's having this argument right now. I'm glad we are. Thank you, Ed Rogers. Thank you, Steve McMahon. When we return, will the Myers withdraw, unify President Bush's base on the right? Plus, the latest on where the CIA leak case may be heading. More on that. This is Hardball only on MSNBC.